Picture this, it's fourth down in the biggest game of your life. The defense knows what play you're going to run. You know they know. They know you know they know sounds confusing, right? Well, welcome to Peyton Manning's world. A world where football wasn't just about throwing a ball, it was like a chess match at 100 miles per hour. See, while other quarterbacks were winning with rocket arms and lightning speed, Peyton was out there looking like your local mailman. Seriously, this dude ran the 40-yard dash like he was carrying groceries. But here's the crazy part. He still dominated the NFL for nearly 2 decades. March 24, 1976. New Orleans, Louisiana. The Manning family welcomed their second son, Peyton. But this wasn't just any family, this was football royalty. See, their dad, Archie Manning, wasn't just a football player. In New Orleans, he was basically a saint before the Saints got good. The Manning household wasn't your typical home. While other kids were playing with action figures, the Manning boys were running full-contact football games in the backyard. Cooper, the oldest, was the athlete. Peyton was the pudgy middle child with a head too big for his body. And little Eli, he was just trying to keep up with his big brothers. But here's where it gets interesting. Every morning, while most 4-year-olds were watching cartoons, Peyton was practicing his 5-step drop. Not because his dad forced him, the kid was obsessed.
Right, you're going to be a football player when you grow up?
Even then, he wasn't the fastest or strongest. But man, did that big head come in handy. Cooper and Peyton, though, that relationship was something special. Started out like any brothers, fighting 1 minute, best friends the next. Cooper never let Peyton forget he was faster, stronger, better looking, not that it was hard. But something magical happened at Newman High School. Picture this, Cooper, the senior star receiver. Peyton, the sophomore quarterback still growing into his body. The same brothers who used to beat each other up in the backyard became the most dangerous duo in Louisiana high school football. Cooper would come home after practice and say, "Bro, I'm gonna be open on this route." And, sure enough, next game, touchdown, they had it all planned out. Cooper was headed to Ole Miss, their dad's old school. Peyton would follow. The Manning dynasty would continue. But sometimes life has other plans. In 1992, during summer practice at Ole Miss, Cooper started feeling numbness in his hands and feet. The doctor's news hit like a linebacker you never saw coming. Spinal stenosis. Just like that, Cooper Manning's football career was over. He was lucky to be walking. Here's the thing about Peyton, he didn't just lose his favorite receiver that day. He watched his big brother lose everything he'd ever worked for. So when Peyton changed his number to 18, Cooper's number, it wasn't just about honoring his brother. It was a promise. Every time Peyton stepped on the field, he was playing for 2. Manning was the top recruit in the country, but his college decision turned into something bigger than football. See, in the South, where you play college ball isn't just a choice, it's a statement.
I made up my mind, I don't expect to ever look back. I'm going to stay at the University of Tennessee.
And Peyton had 2 options, follow his dad's legacy to Ole Miss, or do the unthinkable, go to rival Tennessee. For most kids, this would be simple. Your dad's Archie Manning. He's a legend at Ole Mississippi. You go where dad went. But Peyton wasn't most kids. When he visited Tennessee, something clicked. While everyone was focused on the family name, Peyton was thinking about X's and O's. Tennessee ran a pro-style offense, the kind of system where a quarterback's brain mattered more than his legs. The decision, it nearly caused a civil war in Mississippi. Ole Miss fans didn't just feel betrayed, they felt personally insulted. Some folks even turned on Archie, like his son's choice somehow erased all those years he'd given them. But in Knoxville, they got way more than just a quarterback. Most freshmen show up looking to play. Peyton showed up with a briefcase full of game film. While his teammates were learning the playbook, he was rewriting it. Story goes, in his first quarterbacks meeting, Peyton corrected the coach about a West Virginia defensive scheme from 3 years ago. The coach checked the tape, Manning was right. That's when they realized this wasn't some freshman trying to show off. This was a football scientist who happened to play quarterback. At Tennessee, Peyton didn't just play football, he turned the quarterback room into a science lab. 4th string on the depth chart. Didn't matter. This dude was breaking down film like he was getting paid for it. Then came the moment every freshman quarterback dreads.
I guess you would call them statistical goals, but they all are important to the quarterback to be doing my job well, or usually if you're doing those well, your chances of winning increase.
Second game of the season against UCLA. Injuries hit the quarterback room hard. Suddenly, that 4th string, freshman with the big forehead was up. First play, Complete disaster. Looked like a baby giraffe trying to ice skate. But here's the crazy part, after every series, while other players were catching their breath, Manning was on the sideline scribbling notes, drawing plays, learning. By the next game, he wasn't just playing, he was the starter. The same guy who looked lost against UCLA was now calling audibles like a pro. His teammates couldn't believe it.
Peyton is making steady progress, and we hope to have him near full speed by the time we get to game.
Here's this gangly freshman, changing plays at the line of scrimmage, telling seniors where to line up. He'd spend so much time in the film room, we had to give him his own key, his college coach Philip Fulmer said. Sometimes the janitor would find him in there at 3 a.m., still watching tape from games 3 years ago. But Manning wasn't just studying. He was revolutionizing how college quarterbacks prepared. Started keeping notebooks on every defense he faced. Not just formations, we're talking individual players' tendencies. If a safety had a habit of leaning left before a blitz, it was in the notebook. If a linebacker tapped his foot before rushing, Manning knew about it. By his junior year, he had the kind of stats that make video games look realistic. Could have gone pro right then. First round pick, guaranteed. But Peyton did. Something that had NFL scouts scratching their heads. He stayed for his senior year. People thought I was crazy, Manning said. But I had unfinished business. Not just with football, with college itself. I was actually there to learn.
And stay at the University of Tennessee for my senior year. It was one of the smartest decisions I've ever made.
That senior year. Pure Manning magic. Breaking records, winning games, making SEC defenses look silly. But the best part, he graduated with a degree in speech, communication, with a 3.61 GPA. While other future NFL stars were just getting by in classes, Peyton was making Dean's List. By the time he left Tennessee, he hadn't just set passing records, he'd changed how college quarterbacks approached the game. The film study, the preparation, the academic success. He showed that being a quarterback meant using your head for more than just wearing a helmet. Every great story needs a rivalry. But Brady versus Manning wasn't just about two guys throwing footballs, it was like watching two professors fight over a Nobel Prize. Each one trying to outsmart the other. Tom Brady, the 6th round pick with the movie star looks. Peyton Manning, the first overall pick who looked like your local accountant. Two completely different guys, playing the same game in totally different ways. Their first real battle, 2003 AFC Championship. Peyton's breaking every record in sight, making defenses look like they're playing in slow motion. His secret weapon, the no-huddle offense. Before Peyton, teams only used it when they were desperate. He turned it into an art form. Picture this, defense makes a substitution. Manning spots it. Instead of huddling up, he rushes everyone to the line. Now those tired defenders are stuck on the field, gasping for air, while Peyton's standing there, comfortable as can be, shouting Omaha, like it's going out of style. Omaha! Omaha! But Brady and Belichick, they had other plans. Patriots win 24-14, dream crushed. Year later, same story. All those kill calls at the line. All that pre-snap, dancing. The Patriots had done their homework. Playing against Brady and Belichick was like taking a math test while running a marathon. Peyton said later. And every time you think you've solved the equation, they change the numbers on you. But here's the thing about Peyton Manning, the more you beat him, the harder he studied. After those losses, he didn't sulk. Didn't make excuses. Instead, he practically moved into the film room. Started seeing things nobody else could see. While other players were at home playing video games, Peyton was discovering secrets in game tape. I watched every Patriots game from the last 3 years, Manning later revealed. Not just our games against them, every single game they played. Started seeing patterns nobody was talking about. A linebacker's foot tap before a blitz. A safety's slight lean before coverage. The kind of details most people wouldn't notice, with a magnifying glass. 2006 AFC Championship. The game that would define his legacy. Down 21-3 to Brady's Patriots. The crowd at the RCA Dome was silent. Here we go again, right? Another Manning meltdown in the making. Even the die-hard Colts fans were having flashbacks to those painful losses. But this time was different. All those hours in the film room, all those late nights studying tape, they were about to pay off. See, Peyton had noticed something about the Patriots defense. Had a tell, tiny. But it was there. When they showed blitz, their linebackers would shift their weight ever so slightly to their right. Most quarterbacks would panic at the line, scrambling to make a play call. Peyton. He started putting on a show. Omaha, Omaha, hurry, hurry. The Patriots' defense was confused. They'd studied Manning too, knew all his signals, his calls. But Peyton was playing chess while they were playing checkers. Half the time, he wasn't even changing the play, just wanted to make them think he was. It's like poker. Sometimes the best move is making them think you've got a better hand than you do. First drive after halftime, touchdown. Next drive, another touchdown. The comeback was on. Every Patriots blitz met its match. Every defensive shift countered. Before it happened, the same defense that had terrorized Manning for years suddenly looked lost. It was like he knew what we were going to do before we did it. Patriots safety Rodney Harrison said after the game, "We'd change our coverage. He'd change his play, we'd show blitz, he'd find the hot route." It wasn't just a quarterback beating us, it was like having our own playbook used against us. With 3 minutes left, down by 3, Manning led one final drive. The old Peyton might have tensed up, might have tried to force something, but this Peyton, cool as ice, drove the Colts right down the field. When Joseph Adai crossed the goal line for the winning touchdown, it wasn't just a score, it was redemption. Peyton Manning had finally beaten his nemesis, led the biggest championship game comeback ever. But more than that, he proved that the mind could beat pure talent. That all those hours studying film, all that preparation, all that attention to detail, it mattered. Their battles became football's greatest chess match. Brady would crack one of Peyton's codes, so Manning would invent a new one. 17 times over 15 years, these guys went at it. Every game felt like a Super Bowl packed into 60 minutes, and it wasn't just about them. The whole country picked sides. Brady had New England, the dynasty, the perfect system. Manning had the football mind. The audibles, the one-man offense. You couldn't just be a football fan, you had to choose, Brady or Manning. By 2015, both guys were getting older. Brady was still Brady, but Peyton, his arm was starting to betray him. Couldn't make the throws he used to. That laser-precise, deep ball, gone. But that computer in his head, still running perfect. Their last dance came in the 2016 AFC Championship. One final showdown. Manning could barely throw 30 yards by then. His fastball had become a changeup. But sometimes, the old sheriffs got one last bullet in the chamber. The whole game was vintage Brady-Manning. Every play a battle of wits. Patriots blitz, Manning checks out. Brady audibles, Broncos adjust. Fourth quarter, Broncos up, by 8, 2 minutes left. Brady's driving, because of course he is. Gets to the goal line, 2-point conversion to tie it, intercepted. Ball game. Manning wins his last battle against Brady. Final career record, Brady 11, Manning 6. But those numbers don't tell the whole story. These games changed football forever. Made everyone realize quarterback wasn't just about throwing passes, it was about the chess match before the snap. Years later, Brady said something that summed it all up. Peyton Manning made me study harder than any player I've ever faced. Because I knew if I missed one detail, just one, he'd find it. And make me pay for it. Sometimes the hardest part of being a legend isn't the climb to the top, it's what happens when life knocks you back down. Peyton Manning had been the face of the Indianapolis Colts for 14 years. Never missed a game. Not one. That's 227 straight starts of Peyton Manning making defensive coordinators lose sleep. Then came the play that changed everything. Just a routine hit, the kind he'd taken 1,000 times before. Except this time, something was different. That rocket arm suddenly felt like a wet noodle. The greatest mind in football couldn't feel his throwing hand.
Peyton Manning, shaken up, losing his helmet.
Not just any decision, one that would shake up the entire NFL. For neck surgeries later, the Colts had a decision to make. In one corner, you had Manning, the franchise icon, the guy who transformed the team from laughingstock to powerhouse. But he might never throw again. In the other corner, this kid named Andrew Luck, who looked like the next big thing. March 7, 2012. If you were in Indianapolis that day, you could feel the city holding its breath. The sheriff was standing at a podium, trying to keep it together. 14 years of memories hitting him all at once. I'll always be a Colt, he said. But sometimes even great love stories come to an end.
I've been a Colt for almost all of my adult life. But I guess in life and in sports, we all know that nothing lasts forever.
Most people thought that was it. Write the obituary on Manning's career. Thanks for the memories, Peyton. Enjoy retirement. Thing is, they didn't know what was happening behind the scenes. While everyone else was writing him off, Peyton Manning was rewriting his own story. Starting from scratch, literally. We're talking about a guy who had to learn how to throw a football all over again. Not with NFL receivers, not even with a regular football. He started with Nerf balls. Like a kid in the backyard. I couldn't even feel my fingertips, Manning revealed later. Trying to grip a football was like trying to catch water. I'd wake up and try to button my shirt dash, nothing. My daughter would ask me to play catch, and I had to say no. That was the toughest part. But then the Denver Broncos did something that made the whole league think they'd lost their minds. Signed a guy who couldn't feel his fingers to a $96 million contract. People thought John Elway, Broncos GM, had finally taken one too many hits to the head. Peyton Manning's done, they said. You don't come back from nerve damage. Not at 36. Not in the NFL. First day in Denver, Manning shows up in that orange jersey. Looked weird. Like seeing your teacher at the grocery store. But that wasn't the strange part. His throws were different. That trademark spiral, gone. His passes wobbled like wounded ducks. Sports radio was having a field day. While that arm was getting weaker, that mind was getting stronger. But here's what they missed. Manning started reinventing himself. If he couldn't throw the deep ball like before, fine. He'd just have to outsmart everyone even more. He changed his entire throwing motion. Built a new offense around quick passes and pre-snap reads. Turned his weakness into strength. Instead of trying to throw through defenders, he'd figure out where they'd be before they got there. Then 2013 happened. Remember all those people saying he was done? Manning didn't just prove them wrong. He shattered the record books. 55 touchdowns, 5,477 yards, records that still stand today. The guy who couldn't throw anymore was making the NFL look like a video game on rookie mode. One game that season tells you everything you need to know. Week 1 against the Baltimore Ravens, defending Super Bowl champs. Nobody knew what to expect from this new Peyton Manning. That Ravens game, it wasn't just a comeback story, it was a masterclass. 7 touchdowns, no interceptions. The defending champs looked like they were playing a different sport. But it wasn't the touchdowns that made it special, it was how he did it. Every play was like watching a professor teach a class. Before each snap, Manning was pointing out blitzers, shifting protections, changing routes. The Ravens would show one defense, he'd call out Omaha. They'd switch to another defense, he'd yell, hurry hurry. By the fourth quarter, Baltimore's defenders looked like they'd just finished a calculus exam. He beat us with his mind more than his arm, Ravens safety Ed Reed said after the game. We'd disguise a coverage, he'd figure it out. We'd show blitz, he knew it was fake. It was like he was in our defensive huddle. December 22, 2013. Manning breaks Tom Brady's single-season touchdown record. Then breaks Drew Brees' passing yards record. Then breaks the points record. The guy who couldn't feel his fingers a year ago was having the greatest quarterback season in NFL history. But Manning wasn't done. Took the Broncos all the way to the Super Bowl. Sure, they lost to the Seahawks, but think about that. A quarterback with nerve damage, who had to relearn how to throw, who everybody said was finished, just led the highest scoring offense ever to the Super Bowl. The next 2 years, more records fell, most wins by a quarterback. But time was catching up. The arm was getting weaker. The passes wobbling more. Manning's 18th season. His body was breaking down, plantar fasciitis in his foot, ribs bruised, barely able to feel his throwing hand. The media started calling him the sheriff without a gun. Midway through the season, it got ugly. For interceptions against Kansas City, benched for the first time in his career. People were saying what they said back in 2011, Manning was done. Time to hang up the cleats. But here's the thing about old gunslingers, sometimes they've got one last fight left. After 6 weeks on the bench, healing up, studying film like always, Peyton came back for the playoffs. Not as the gunslinger anymore, but as the chess master. The Broncos defense was carrying the load now. Manning, he was like a veteran poker player, not playing his cards, but playing the players. Couldn't throw deep anymore. Fine. He'd nickel and dime them to death. Then came one last showdown with Brady in the AFC Championship. The two old rivals, one final time. Brady was still Brady. Manning could barely throw 30 yards. But sometimes the mind beats the arm. the Broncos won. Barely. Set up one last rodeo, Super Bowl 50 against the Carolina Panthers. Young MVP Cam Newton versus the old sheriff. Superman versus the professor, Super Bowl Sunday. Manning's passes weren't pretty. They wobbled and floated. But every one was where it needed to be. Every audible was perfect. Every pre-snap read, spot on. The Panthers were younger, faster, stronger. But they couldn't outthink him. When the final whistle blew, the Broncos had won. Manning had his second ring, the perfect ending to an imperfect journey. 2 weeks later, he announced his retirement. Left the game the same way he played it, on his own terms.
I have stayed at it. I've stayed at it for 18 years.
The numbers, they're mind-boggling. 71,940 passing yards, 539 touchdowns, 14 Pro Bowls, 7 first-team All-Pro selections, 5 MVP awards, 2 Super Bowl rings. But numbers don't tell the whole story. Peyton Manning didn't just play football, he changed how it's played. Made the quarterback position less about physical gifts and more about mental preparation. Showed that the strongest muscle on the field isn't in your arm, it's between your ears.
You know where the talent is for a quarterback? It's right between the ears. Peyton led the way in that in so many ways. I tried to emulate that.
Because in the end, Peyton Manning didn't just master the game of football, he rewrote it.